Hey to everybody. The Women's Business Collaborative is thrilled to have extraordinary leaders. And one of those is clearly Renee Smith. And you've seen what she is as an executive coach, as a speaker, as a motivator, and as an author of multi-books and videos. And if you think about those titles, think about some of her books. They're all on Amazon, and go look them up. But 5 Steps to Assertiveness, Harness the Power of Your Personal Brand, the Self-Esteem for Dummies. Yes, she wrote that book, Self-Esteem for Dummies, The Bridge to Your Brand, Our Heart's Wonder and Prayers to Heal You. Think about the mountains of knowledge that she will convey, and that we can be so much better leaders because we learn from Renee Smith. Renee?
Yes, thank you, Edie. And excuse me. Thank you, Kim, for working with me on this presentation in terms of hitting the clicks and all that. Greatly appreciated. I need to see the people. Now, I'm at the age where I need readers, so I wanted to see all of your beautiful faces, and thank you, because I know that you are powerful women, and so I'm ready to get started. How about you? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, ready.
All right, let's talk. Back to the presentation, please. I'd like to start with several questions. And the first question is, do you have a brand? Do we have the poll?
Yes, we do.
All right.
1 second. Here's the poll.
All right. Do you believe, whatever it is that you believe a brand is, do you believe you have one? That's a yes or no. Do we have a tally?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
some people are still voting.
Okay.
Okay. I'm ending the poll now. I'm sharing the results.
All right. So 85% say yes, 15% says no. So we have, that lets me know we have some people who understand, at least whatever your knowledge base is, what a brand is. The next question is, do you know what your brand is? That's going to be the next question. As she brings it up, do you know what your brand is? Do we have a tally?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great.
Here we go.
All right.
I'm sorry.
All right. So now this is interesting. 79, the first 85% of you believe that you have a brand, but only 79% know what it is, and then 21% remaining consistent don't. And the final question is, at least in this piece of the presentation, is it still relevant? Is it relevant? I drank some cold water, which was a no-no. Should have had room temperature, didn't have any. But is your brand relevant? Is your brand relevant? When you think about what's happening right now, is your brand relevant? Yes or no? Do we have a tally?
Showing right now.
Okay, so this is interesting because 89% says their brand is relevant, but 85% of you said you didn't have a brand. 85% said you or there was actually 15% said you didn't have a brand at all. So these are some very interesting inconsistencies, which is very, it creates an awareness in terms of where people are in terms of understanding a brand, understanding, is it relevant, is it not relevant, and knowing your brand. Very interesting, thank you. So let's get started into the presentation. First, I want to talk about the deliverables. Please, next slide. One of the things that we talked about, Please, we said that we were going to show you how to package, position, and promote yourself. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit because it's 1/4 and I don't want to go overtime, but I want to make sure you get the information. Next slide, please. So I want to share with you, any time that I speak, before I ever hit the stage, there's a preparation that I go through. And that is to understand what I want for the audience to do, become, and ultimately be inspired by. And so the first thing I want you to do is just stop. Literally stop. Stop thinking, please. Stop thinking, stop trying to become, stop comparing, just completely, not the poll, just completely stop.
Sorry.
Thank you. Just completely stop for a moment, because we are in a space where everything is running so fast that we don't have time to catch up with who we are and where we are. The next thing I want you to do, or my intention, is to look within. And not just look within, please, next. Next, number 3, look within, but also to be able to do some self-reflection. And after self-reflection is to identify, because you can look within and never ask yourself the right questions to get you to the next level of your life, and then to identify the things that are going really well for you, but also where are some of the gaps. Next slide, please. So I want to share with you, next slide, please. I want to, thank you, enter. I want to share with you, back. We're gonna get this together in a moment for you.
A lot of interviews.
So what I want to do is share with you a quote that I wrote in my second book, The Bridge to Your Brand. And having the opportunity to travel around the country and internationally talking about this subject, one of the things that I found, that this simple quote has so many different meanings to so many different people. And the quote is, people's perception of us is influenced by how our behavior affects their lives. Now, because we don't have time to raise our hands and give our perspective, I'm going to share with you my intention when I pin those words. And that is, how you show up for people influences their perception of you, because people want to know what you can do for them and how your behavior impacts their lives. Next slide, next please. So now let's spend some time, enter please. Now let's spend some time examining your brand. Next please. So in order for us to have this conversation, we all have to be working from the same definition, if you will. And so I put something very simple together, because as you noticed in the poll, people have different perspectives of where they are, but also what this whole I have a brand really means. And so branding, as I've written for this particular presentation, is what people have come to expect from you based on how they see, hear, and what they have seen, heard, and experienced from you by interacting with you directly or indirectly. And I'm going to get into that indirectly piece later in this presentation. Next, please. So what are the factors that impact your brand? What are those things? It's beliefs, behaviors, right? So let's start with beliefs. So we all believe or have a belief about the world, about ourselves, and about people. And as you think about the world right now, we have to ask ourselves, challenge ourselves to think whether or not what we believe to be true can serve us moving forward. Or is there a need to shift? Because how we believe is how we show up, which is behaviors, inner place. So, and then finally, we get a response. So every time that inner peace, every time that you show up in your beliefs and who you believe you are and who you believe that the person is that you're interacting with, there is an exchange that creates a response. And that response dictates how you feel about yourself, which in turn impacts the next interaction that you have, which ultimately becomes your brand. Next slide, please. So the world is changing drastically, fast, at accelerated pace. When you look at the pandemic, the health pandemic, the economic downturn, when you look at the moral fiber of this country literally being shifted, you can feel it, you can see it, you can hear it. The questions that we have to ask ourselves, next please, is what are the new problems we're facing? And I'd like to pause for a moment and ask you, what do you believe? Just off the top of your head, as you think about what are the new problems we're facing. So we've always dealt with in the workplace employee behaviors, right? But what are those new things we're facing and what is it gonna look like? Because if we are not examining what the new problems are and making projections as to what those new challenges are going to be, then what ends up happening is we're left behind because we're not innovative in our thinking. So are there any responses to that, Kim, that's coming in terms of what do you see to be the newest challenges? And think about it. Is anything coming in, Kim?
I'm looking now.
Okay, so as she's looking, I'm thinking about organizations that have made very quick pivots. So you look at a company like Lyft. So the ride sharing industry literally went bottoms up, right? But what Lyft did, they pivoted and they said, okay, well, we'll package supplies and we'll take them to the medical centers and we'll bring you food and so their organization made the pivot and they're able to survive. You look at General Electric, they created space to make ventilators and they're making, I think by the end of August, they'll have 30,000 ventilators that are going to be done. So companies are pivoting and they're pivoting fast. Look at Zoom, look at their stock. Their stock is literally out of the roof. And hopefully you purchased some. But if you look at Zoom was out there, but as soon as the pandemic happened, businesses really, really began to use the service. So think about Kim, anyone? Did anyone add?
We have managing teams virtually.
Yes.
We have hold on, I have to scroll down, that is. Managing teams virtually. How have people needs changed, evolved due to virtual working? Mental health and well-being.
Yes.
Upward moving. Sorry, someone typed in and it pops it up. The difficult of promoting individual contributions to managers virtually.
Yes. So those are really good, excellent points, but I want you to notice something. Almost all of them were relevant to people. All of them were relevant to people. We didn't think about technology and how all the businesses are going digitally. It's interesting how all of our minds are really targeted people, and how we manage people and how we manage their mental, help them to manage their mental health, and how do we identify talent and get them promoted? How do we onboard talent? So I think that's very, very important, because that tells you where our heads are and our hearts in terms of the shift. Next, please.
Hold on. I'm all over the screen. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. It's just an inner.
Yes, but it's, yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we have to ask ourselves, is how can we help solve them? How can we, what is it that we have in our arsenal that's going to prepare us, to prepare others to solve these very specific problems? Because think about it, there was always mental health challenges, right? But now they're saying half of America is unhappy because they don't have jobs. They're concerned about their health. They're concerned about the health of their children. They're concerned about going back to work. What does that space look like, right? So even if you're in the mental health space, how you think about mental health and the challenges just within that industry alone has shifted. Next, please. So here's what we have to ask ourselves, inner. Do you have what it takes right now in your arsenal? And I'm going to pause for a moment and let you think about that. Do I have what it takes in my arsenal right now to make the pivot and make the impression and create buzz? Do I have it? Is there something missing? What's missing? How can I get it? Who has it and who's doing it well? How can I do the necessary research to get where I need to be? And the next question is, am I committed to the journey? Is this the work I'm most passionate about? The change created not just a shift in how we pivot and I want to quickly catch up and make sure that my business is running well. It also has created a pivot within us, a different need, a different yearning. So you have to ask yourself, am I in a space where I'm about to retire and I'd rather write a book and provide that type of intellectual property, or I want to launch my own business, or I want to expand the services that my businesses offer? What is it that I want to do that's going to help me to be more passionate and more engaged in providing a solution for people and businesses? Next slide, please. So I want to share with you the 8-step process that I developed to build a successful brand. And we're not going to talk about all of them in detail, but I felt the need for you to have them. And the first step is to identify where you want to go. And so oftentimes as a coach, some people just want to find out where you are. I start out with where you want to go. What is it that you want to do? Whose lives do you want to touch? How do you want to touch them? What's going to make you different and distinguishable from anyone else in the marketplace that is going to get your phone ringing, or it's going to have someone in leadership take notice of you? The next step is, please, is to pinpoint where you are. Where am I? So that I know what I need to do to close the gap. Next slide, please. The way you figure that out is to evaluate your resources. And I'm going to get into that when I talk a little bit about brand equity. Next step, please, is to know your audience. Who are you targeting? Now, I get this question a lot when I work with employees. And they say to me, well, I'm not a business, so I don't have an audience. Everyone has an audience. So even in corporate America, education, you have a very specific audience. You may have a primary, you have a secondary. Now, this is really interesting because the business roundtable that is composed of CEOs of your major corporations, 200 of them signed a new proclamation. Before, everybody was saying that businesses, their whole focus is stockholders. We have to make a profit. Well, recently, they signed a proclamation that says stakeholders are number one, and then stockholders. But stockholders are a part of your stakeholders, right? So even companies are saying, wait a second, we've been doing this wrong. And if we haven't been doing it wrong, we've been articulating it wrong. We need to talk about our employees and what their needs and desires are. We need to identify who our customers are, what is upsetting them, what is making them feel good about buying products from us. Next slide, please. And the fifth step is you're going to package yourself. And the next step is you're going to position your brand. Now, the way I worded that was very deliberate and intentional because you're going to package you, but you're going to position the brand. And I'm going to get into more detail about that in a moment. Next step, please. And step 7 is you're going to promote the value of the brand. So I want you to take real notice to package yourself, position the brand, promote the value. And number 8, commit to the journey. Next slide, please. So know your brand's equity. And I want to ask a question here. What is your most valuable asset as you think about brand equity? And brand equity is your tangible and intangible assets that you possess. That's your brand equity. And when you think about that, and I'm going to pause and just give you a moment to think about what is your most valuable asset in your brand's equity. And if you'll put it in the chat, I'm interested in knowing what you're thinking. And as they come in, Kim, please let us know what's coming up for people.
Okay. Dependability, supporting other women and ensuring diversity, relationship building.
Very good, very good.
My authentic connection with people, purposeful integrity.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. All right, enter please. We'll continue with the presentation. Now, this is my belief, and some of you are dead on. I believe you can build confidence. I believe you can develop skills. But one thing is most important is the relationship you have with people, your network. Enter, please. Your number one brand's equity is the relationships, because your relationships is what gives you the edge. That's the reason why you take companies like IBM, you take small companies that are starting out. The most valuable asset on the market right now are people's demographics, their names, their email addresses, their any type of information you have on your network. That's money in this world today. That's why there's so much conversation about Facebook and Google and what they're doing and how they're advertising to people, because everyone knows that a following and not just following, because people have a lot of followers, but people aren't engaged. So you can buy followers. I'm talking about an engaged network that you can reach out to, have conversation with, and they will wear your t-shirt when necessary, and vice versa. Next, please. The next item on the list for me are your experiences, your expertise, and the reputation you have that influences others. Because you have relationships, it doesn't mean that you can influence those relationships. Very often I've reached out to people and I say, hey, can you connect me with such and such? Because they say they know them and they can't. Versus if somebody can pick up the phone to somebody that they say they know and have a conversation with them, that's access. That's access and that's influence. And that's where you need your brand. If it's there, wonderful. If it's not, that is a goal to try to obtain, is to build the relationship where you have access with a number of people that can add value to you and you to them. And next, please. Your innovative ideas, basically in your intellectual property. It's basically, what do you come to the table with that other people want? It's not just, you can have great intellectual property, you can have great ideas, but if they don't want what you're offering, it has zero value to the person. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share with you my branding model, and I think this is critically important. In 2011, when I just started shifting my brand. So I want to share something with you. I think it's critically important. I think that every 3 years, you should be evaluating your brand. You should be expanding your brand. So if you're providing a particular service, the same service that you were providing 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you have not expanded, then you may not be maximizing the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives, as well as increase your income and influence. And so in 2011, that's when I started. I started in 2005. 2005, my brand, I launched a brand. 3 years later, I shifted the brand. I didn't shift, I increased, I expanded, I began to change a little bit. And let me share this with you. It's important to, and we'll get to this a little bit more extensively, but in case I'm giving it to you now, it's important to be able to think about what your audience is looking for. After you speak, really learning how to listen, because they're going to tell you what your next step should be in terms of the value that you're bringing to them, but also what is the unmet need that they have. So let's start with this question. So some of you, I'm going to enter, please. So the question is, why am I here? Right? And because some of you are on different levels, I'm going to give you that question in 2 different ways. The first way is, why am I here? Meaning, why am I here on the planet? What am I to do? What is the impact I'm here to make? Right? Then for those of you who are already in the C-suite, for those of you who are already at the table, I'm going to ask the question this way. Why are you at the table? Why were you invited? What value? Well, let me stop there. Why are you invited? Why are you at the table? What are you to do as a result of being there, right? When you understand that, that is a part of your Inner Please mission. Because we all have to have a reason for being, right? And you can't say, well, I'm there because I was invited. Well, why were you invited? Are you just there to be in alignment with who invited you there? Or are you there to challenge what's being said and done in a particular way based on your beliefs and how you see the country shifting? That's your Inner Please, your likability factor. So people like you because you are in alignment with their vision and you are in alignment with your own vision. So oftentimes, one of the things that sometimes we are afraid to do or hesitant to do is to challenge establishment, challenge CEOs. Literally yesterday, I was talking to a CEO who runs a major organization. And he said to me, you know, I just don't know what to do right now. And I need to take your couch for a moment, right? So you would think that a CEO, they know all the answers, they're ready to go. I was actually shocked that he said that, and he was so open and ready to share what was going on and what were some of the challenges. But there's something about having a mission. And that mission for me is to always listen and inspire. Listen and inspire, right? And I think because he knew that, there was a comfort level. So that's what makes you likable. The next question is, please, where do you lead people to? So we all have to decide for ourselves where we're going to lead people to when we're interacting with them. Not just, okay, I'm in the boardroom and I have to figure it out, or I have my own business and I have to figure it out. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where do you lead people every day, whether you're at the post office, whether you're at the grocery store. What is your brand? What is your brand? Because that's what makes you marketable. And I want to go back to that one point for a moment, because I think it's critically important for me to pause there for a moment. And that is to say, when you look at what's happening with CEOs right now that are resigning, people who they started the business and they have to, the board of directors, elects them out, is because they forget that people are watching, and we live in a digital world. And the moment it gets tweeted and tweeted again, or Facebook or Instagrammed, then all of a sudden your brand looks very different than it did. It gets muddy. So where you lead people is what makes you marketable. It's your message. Can you enter, please? And then enter again. That's what's your marketability factor. That's what gets people following you. Your marketability is what gets people going. People can like you and never pick up the phone and call you. Why? Is your message off? Is it speaking to them? Because that's what makes people, your marketability factor is what makes people pick up the phone. Next, please. The results that you create. So everybody's looking for a result. Everyone has an agenda. And if you don't have one, you need to get one, right? Because, and I say that, that was something that was written in 2005 about having an agenda, and people feel uncomfortable sometimes. I shouldn't have an agenda. You really should have an agenda, and know the results that you create, because that's the value that you bring. And finally, please enter, that's your credibility. So you go from being likable to gaining followers, right? People who will call you, people who want to engage, people who will help you expand your brand equity, to enter, please, your credibility. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about your package. And I literally have 10 minutes, so I'm going to run through this. I apologize. Your brand package, enter. The first thing you need to do is identify, ask yourself some questions. What signal am I sending out to people? What am I saying? Enter the next. I'll continue to talk, but enter the next. What signal am I sending when I show up in the room? Right? Verbally, non-verbally, in my facial expression, in the words that I choose. Also, why would somebody want to spend time with me? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why would somebody want to spend time with me? What do I have to offer? What is the value I deliver? What is it that they want that I have that I can offer them to elevate their lives? And then finally, do I need to pay closer attention? As you ask yourself those words, do I need to pay closer attention to the message that I'm sending? Next slide, please. And then enter. So your brand package, first of all, is your appearance. And we all know that it's changing drastically, right? How people show up has become very different from at least my generation, where it was suit and tie. The energy that you're sending out, that invisible force, your persona, and then your composure. How well and how do you respond when you are in a challenging situation? Next, please. And those are all three are the foundation. But remember, a brand package has a lot more components. It's your mission, your message, it's your vision, your mission, your message, you know, how you dress, how you speak, your communication style. There's a lot of different components that I can't go into here because of the time, but though here are the foundational pieces that you'll need. Next slide, please. Okay, so 9 brand positioning moves. Number 1, a compelling brand story. If your story is not compelling, you will not influence people. If you can't influence people, then your brand is not working for you. And let me share with you this really, really quick. I launched my business in 2005 off of the fact that I was bullied and fired from my job. Now, there are millions of people who have been bullied and fired from their job. So how did I move that one story from an incident that happened in my life to a full-fledged business, signing book deals and working with over 100 corporations across 9 industries? How does that happen? Because the story is compelling. How can you bring people closer to you? How can you be transparent about what happened? How can you show the lessons in the story in 4 or 5 different ways, but launch it based on one major story that you know is going to get people, it is going to engage and connect people to you. Next, please. Communicate and market your expertise effectively. So how many times do you hear the question, what do you do for a living? And you say, oh, I'm a vice president, or I'm a chief corporate responsibility officer, right? They didn't ask you, what is your title? What do you do? I help people increase their income and influence by becoming more likable, marketable, and credible. Every time I say that, somebody says, oh, I need you. Why? Because I communicated my expertise effectively. You have to be able to come up with a statement that when people ask you, what do? You don't give them a title, you give them the value of what you deliver. Next slide, please. Be consistent in who you are. Next slide, please. Or yeah, enter. And social media productivity. Social media, we use it for many different reasons. I encourage my clients to always use it for the purpose of expanding your brand. You have to ask yourself, why am I on here? I'm on here to share what I've had for dinner tonight, or share about what's happening with my family. How does that connect back to your brand? Next slide. Next, enter. Build partnerships. All of you are on here because you understand the importance of partnerships. So that's major. And you know, the question is, how do you go about doing that? How do you do the outreach? What is it that you're saying? What are you able to articulate it in such a way that people really want to engage with you, as Edie does very well? Okay, number 6. Number 6, please. Leverage your brand activity of people who respect you. So I'm going to talk, but please go to the next slide why I explain them about leveraging the brand of other people. So people have to want to wear your t-shirt, and they not only do they have to want to wear it, they have to wear it, because you need people to endorse you to get a job, to get the next contract. So it's incredibly important to build those alliances and relationships and show up consistently that lets people know that this is a person that I can bring true value to you. Be authentically yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. You've heard it before. Just be who you are. And then say no to opportunities that don't match your mission and your message. And number 9, let's take one moment, if we can, and what is your best branding position move? What have you done that you positioned yourself and it became explosive for you? I'm going to give you an example of what happened to me. So I invested into a program, and while I was at that program, I showed up, I created alliances, and 3 years later, the owner of the multi-million-dollar company said, hey, you are so memorable. I'm calling you. I'm working on this major project with Jack Canfield and other folks. I want to find out if you'd be interested in becoming a part of it. Well, that led to not only a 5-year relationship of coaching clients, working with Jack Canfield, but also that's being on his platform, being seen by hundreds of thousands of people is what led to the book deal. Okay, so Kim, can you tell me what's going on in the chat? Any position moves?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let's keep it moving because we have like five minutes. Okay, how to promote your brand. Step 1. First of all, you have to be likable. Oprah says this isn't the quote that's there, but I'm going to tell you the one that I often use. People want to know, do you see me? Do you hear me? And do I matter? Do you see me? Do you hear me? And do I matter? And oftentimes when we walk into a room, we're trying to get to the decision maker, or we're trying to get to this person because of the influence. The person in front of you could be that gateway to your next deal. And I have a great story about a contract I got because I said to a person who didn't look like a decision maker, I had a conversation with her and literally it led to a contract. So be mindful that everyone has significance. Step 2, be marketable. Operate from the premise that everybody has an agenda and set of priorities, and your job is to see how they're in alignment with yours and help them to get to the next level of their lives or of their business goal. Next, please. And be credible, meaning always behave in ways that confirm that people can trust you. Next slide, please. Okay, just list them so people can look at them and I'll go through them very quickly. If you can enter all of them. Thank you. Thanks, Kim. All right, so be an engaged listener. And you know, my husband says this. He says, Renee, you squint when you're listening. Like he says, you squint with your ears, And I've been told that my whole body, my whole being is listening when a person is talking, because I really, really, really want to understand where they are. I have a matter of seconds sometimes to figure out where a person is and how I can get them to the next level of their lives. So it's incredibly important. And I will tell you, the reason why I've had this humongous opportunity to do this work is because being an engaged listener. So I absolutely encourage it. Also, be intentional when you speak. We all see the problems that are going on when we speak, and we speak without being intentional. A conscious communicator. So it's one thing to speak, and it's another thing to be conscious about your facial expression, your body language, the resonance in your voice, the everything about who you are is a part of the communication experience that you're creating with the person you're with. Be a captivating messenger. I've talked a little bit about that. What are you saying when people are talking to you? But also, what are you doing and how are you listening? Be added value. We all know we have to add value to people's life, and be alert, be aware, be awake. Next slide, please. Your growth plan. So there are many things that you can do in order to, you can take a class, you can do a lot of things. But one thing is to pay attention. We're in a market right now where certainly taking classes are important, but you have to pay attention to what's happening. Pay attention to what's happening in the world today, because by paying attention to people's behaviors and thinking about where they're going to go next and how you can meet the demand is going to help keep you relevant in the marketplace. Be accountable to every interaction you have. Be accountable means to me that you are saying, I'm going to be present and I'm going to be accountable for what happens in the exchange and how I leave them feeling when they left my presence. Also, absolutely love learning. Link events. So this pandemic the economic downturn, as well as the moral challenges, moral and social challenges of this country right now is not new. This has been brewing for a while. Link the events, because as you link the events and begin to think about how we got here, we can think about what our next step should be. And then also rebrand yourself. I talk about every 3 years, I rebrand, meaning I expand what's already there. I started with courage, confidence, personal accountability. Now it's branding, it's communication, it's executive presence, right? So throughout this 15-year journey, I've had all these different, not different messages, but certainly it's been an expanding message. And you have to ask yourself, are you doing the same? Are you being present and staying relevant? The poll, please. Next slide, please.
Yep.
All right, so the question becomes, okay, everybody took it?
No. Hold on.
Okay, she's going to, while she's doing that, put your questions in the chat so that I can spend some time answering some questions that you may have while she's working on the poll. All right,
Okay.
so.
See it now?
Yep, it's there. So let's do the poll since it's up. It's, does your brand need a makeover? As you think about where you are, think about some of the content that is relevant to where you are in your career right now and where you ultimately want to go. Does your brand need a makeover?
Renee, I think that could be, everybody think about tweaks too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was the answer to? So 86%, now this is interesting. 86% said that, 85% said they had a brand. Now 86% said they need a makeover. Only 14% said they don't. So I applaud you. What that tells me is that I've done the work, right, of helping you to understand that we're living in a new world and it's important for us to be prepared for the challenges that are ahead. Close the poll and go to the next slide, and then I'll take the Q&A. Next slide, please.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay, so I want to share with you very quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm happy to take any calls. If you call, I'll happy to spend some time with you talking about where you are and how I may be able to help. So I have a training coming up, Unbottle Your Genie, Design Your Brand Action Plan. When you walk away, you're going to have an action plan for your brand. You'll be ready to expand it, launch it, relaunch, wherever you want to go. It is in July. It's on my events page, srenee.com/events. If you go to srenee and click on events, it's there. There's a lot of information there. And I will tell you, this is the training that SHRM literally purchased from me to teach their senior leaders. And so this is a senior leading program that typically you would get personal points if you were in HR. That I teach for them. But I was teaching it across this country long before I came in contact with SHRM. Now, next slide. Q&A.
Yes, so we have, Elaine wants to know how to rebrand but remain authentically you.
Yeah, very good. So rebranding is still the process of going through, of asking yourself those core questions again, because we all have beliefs that we may not believe today. So we all have our core beliefs, and then we have these other beliefs that have we've latched onto. So you'll still be authentic because the branding process, the rebranding process is very similar to the branding process. What do I believe? What is my value? What is my mission? This is all based on internal work. So it doesn't change. What you're doing is expanding your message. One of the things, though, as I think about rebranding, the question I would ask you is, where do you want to go? Are you going to a different market? Are you staying within the same market? Are you expanding to another market? So at the core of that, you're going to be asking yourselves those types of questions. Where am I going with this rebrand? What is the end result that I'm trying to create? And that's going to determine the path that you take in order to get there. And no matter what, a brand, let me explain this, because I think people may not know this. You may know this, may not. There's a difference in image and branding. Image is I show up, mirror your behavior because I want to impress you. Branding is I show up in my authentic self, in my power. And we have a conversation and decide if we're in alignment with each other. So branding in itself is authenticity, because that's the nature of the branding process. I hope that was helpful.
So Mary asked, how to display energy and likability remotely?
Oh, wow. Great question. So it's interesting, because a great part of that is people can see a lot more about you from the camera than they can like when you're live, because they miss so much, right? So it's really about your facial expression. It's about the resonance in your voice. It's about the speed in which you deliver, right? Remaining excited. You have to put even a little more energy if you want to keep people entertained, engaged, etc. So the likability factor has a lot to do with what you're communicating right here, right? And also the value that you're bringing to a person's life. Remember, people only like you because you made them feel good about being who they are.
That's good. So there's another question.
Sure.
What are some recommendations for asking, this is from Melanie, what are some recommendations for asking others about how they perceive your brand?
Excellent, Melanie. I'm glad you asked that question. So, because I provide this this exercise, so you can ask people that you know and don't know to give you. Here's the first step. First step is write down 3 adjectives, 3 or 4. You can write down as many as you like. Adjectives that you believe describe you, and then you would go to, say, a family member, someone in the community, someone that sits on a board with you. You could post it on social media and tell them, hey, I'm working with a coach and I've been given this assignment to get adjectives that describe me. Can you please provide? And see which ones link up. And that's how you can tell if you're in alignment or if you're not.
Great. And then we have one other question. Cher asked, can you share a little more insight about creating your own agenda? Any key learnings that you have experienced?
Wow, about creating your own agenda. Okay, so for me, it's about intention. What do I want people to leave with after having been in my presence? So I just believe in intention. I believe that when you put it here and here, I believe that all of a sudden you begin to act that out, right? You show up in that way. So set the intention. I want people to leave feeling inspired. I want them to leave feeling good about themselves, because that's going to dictate also what comes out of your mouth. So that's why it's important, your beliefs, what your intention is in the world. I hope that was helpful. I know I'm kind of rushing because we're almost at 12, but that's what I would suggest in terms of having your own agenda, is having an intention towards every person you come in contact with.
Perfect. And so that takes us to the top of the hour. And I just want to say thank you, Renee, for a magnificent presentation. And it really, really spoke to everyone that's on the call that showed up. And so I want to turn it over now to Edie for the last words.
Just thank you. How's everybody feeling? Is it inspired by us, Renee? How compelling?
Thank you.
What do you think, Felicity?
That was fantastic. I've got so much to think about. And honestly, this is such a transformational time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Cher, what do you think?
Awesome time to bring this to the table. I think everybody should really be understanding what their brand is right now in this time. So awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Elizabeth?
I think this is so good. Thank you so much to both of you for presenting, and for Edie for bringing it, and for the WBC. This is something I've taken notes the whole time, so that a lot to learn. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Anyone else?
There are many thanks in the chat. There are many thanks, and they're still coming in. Thank you. Thanks for everything. This was great. Renee, you're awesome. Excellent job, Renee. Thank you. So
My pleasure.
they're sending out chat. Some
Yeah.
have to drop off, but they're
But I think S. Renee is extraordinary, makes us all stop and think about our relationships, our brand, our authenticity, all the things that we've all been thinking about.